Today we're going to show you how to rebuild the upper cylinder in the Shoebox air compressor. First thing we're going to go through is the tools, and the most important tool is going to be an O-ring pick. This is made from a dental pick, and this is a straight piece of steel with a little hook on the end, and in this case the dental pick has had the point ground off. We don't want a point on the end of this because it'll stab your O-rings and cause them to leak. So we're going to use this tool to reach inside and hook out the parts inside the cylinder. These dental tools can be had relatively inexpensively from Harbor Freight. This kit here from Harbor Freight's about $4, and it's a nice investment. We used the straight one from the center here and bent the end over, and we ground it off until there was about a little more than an eighth, a little less than a quarter hook on that, and that's what we use to pull the O-rings out. Just make sure you take the point off and you make a nice rounded edge on that. Next tools we're going to need is an Allen wrench. This is going to unscrew the nut on the end of the cylinder. We're going to need 2 5/8 wrenches in the back here. We're going to need just a little dab of lithium grease and then the spare O-rings. So first thing we're going to do is look at a cutaway of the cylinder. So these are the parts that are in the cylinder. On this end here you've got a nut, and then we have the large spacer. We have the first piston O-ring, second spacer, this is the small spacer, and the last piston O-ring. In the back here we've got the back check valve and the back check O-ring, the back check spring, and then the high pressure fitting is holding it all in the end. So the first thing we want to do is we want to unscrew this nut. So what I'll do is I'll first do it in the cutaway here. So we're going to stick it in there and unscrew this. And now I'm going to do it in the regular cylinder. Now this should only be just a little more than snug in there. You don't have to jam it in place. So that's your first step. Then the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to use our O-ring pick and we're going to slide the first cylinder out. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to feel all the way to the back here when we jump over the O-ring, and then we're going to push down and try and hook the O-ring and the spacer and drag them both out together. If you get just the spacer too, that's fine. So let's give that a try. So again, we're going to use the hooked end pointing down. We're going to slide it in there until we bump across the O-ring. I push it down and it clicks, and then I'm going to drag the spacer out, and we missed the O-ring, so what we'll do is we'll go back in for the O-ring there. Go until I feel the O-ring, jump across the O-ring, push down, and hook the O-ring out. Now we still have the small spacer in there. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to go deeper. When you get past the small spacer, sometimes you can grab it in the vent hole, which it looks like where we got here. There's some vent holes in here which allow the air to pass into the cylinder, and you can hook it in there. Now there's one more O-ring in here. Let's not forget about that one. So we're going to go down and we're going to hook that last O-ring. I'm going to feel for it and pull it out. There it is. So that's everything out of this side. Now we're going to go to the back end and we're going to look at this high pressure fitting and the back check valve. So now we're going to unscrew this fitting and we're going to take out the back check valve here. So I'll just do it right here on the cylinder. Now I've loosened this up, but the way you want to do this is there are flats now in the pistons, and they take a 5/8 wrench like so. You take a second 5/8 wrench and you come in here, and then you can unscrew the cylinder like that. Now this has already been loosened for the video. So we're going to unscrew this, and sticking out the end here, if it doesn't want to come out, take your handy O-ring pick and pull it out, and that's your back check. Now we can look all the way through the cylinder. There's nothing in there. Your cylinder is now completely disassembled, just that easy. So let's take a look at the back check valve here. The back check valve has a spring. It's just pushed on here, kind of snug, stays on there, and then it's got this O-ring. So if we want to change the O-ring, we use our fingernail and just pop it off. And now we're going to go to the new one, and we're going to put just a dab of grease on our finger, and I'm going to wipe it on the O-ring so you can just barely see it, you know, but you can feel a little slick shine on there. And I'm going to push it on here and snap it back on. So that's all we have to do for that. So let's go ahead and put this now back in. You drop this back in here. We then want to take the fitting and you want to remove the old Teflon tape and you want to put some new Teflon tape. We won't do that for the purposes of this video, but you know what I'm talking about. And then we'll use our wrenches to torque it down again. So that'll seal up nice, and that's the back check has now been rebuilt. Now let's go to the front. Again, we've got some new O-rings. I'm going to take just a dab, just a film on here. We're going to lube up the O-rings. And now we're going to put the first O-ring in the tube. And we're going to kind of make sure that it's square in there. You see how it's square? It's not sideways. And it's in there a little bit. So now I'm going to put the first spacer in there. And I'm going to push it down a little further than the width of the O-ring. I'm going to get a little more lube, touch my O-ring, lubricate my O-ring some. Now I'm going to push the second O-ring in there, and the back of the O-ring tool works good for this. Okay, now you see how that's in there? It's all flat in there. Now both O-rings are back in. We now take the spacer, push the spacer in, and now you can use the spacer to push them all back in. And the spacer should be just about flush with the ledge in there, the aluminum ledge. If it sticks out too far, that means your O-rings are not properly seated in there. If it goes down too far, that means you forgot one of the O-rings. So there should be two O-rings in there. So lastly, we take our nut and we screw the nut in. And we use our Allen wrench and we tighten it up. And you're going to notice here that I'm going to just kind of snug it, not particularly tight here, tight enough to get it to stay. Some of these have worked their way out. If yours start coming out, you can put a drop of Loctite on there and lock it into place. But now you have a completely rebuilt cylinder. What you can do is you can slide it on your piston and make sure that it slides. You'll feel it hit the first O-ring and then the second O-ring, and it should have a nice snug feel there. Now I'm using this piston that's been removed from one of the shoebox, but don't do that. Use the piston while it's mounted and sticking out. You can rotate your crankshaft to kind of stick it out, and then you can shove your cylinder on before you mount it all the way and feel that the O-rings are working properly in there. And that's all it takes. That is a complete rebuild of the upper cylinder.